Greetings, vinyl community, and welcome to VC Friday. Now, last week, in speaking about Charles Ives, I was speaking about a character who was very much shaped by his birthplace, in Ives's case, New England. And today's subject is another character who is very much shaped by a very different part of America, whose birthplace was New Orleans. And that character is Malcolm Rebennack, better known as Dr. John. And with Halloween coming up, I thought that it was time to spotlight one of the spookiest albums in my collection, and that is Dr. John's 1968 debut album, Gris-Gris. This is not quite an original copy. This is a second pressing on the yellow Atco label, but this is the version that I had back in the day when I originally purchased this album in 1970. This is a stereo copy. I also have this mono reissue copy on the Jackpot label, and it's on this very groovy green vinyl with a label that mimics the old Atco label. And you'll notice the difference in how the figure is placed on the album cover on the two. It's one of those album designs where they have only one slick printed up, so it's got stereo written on the top and mono written on the bottom, and they just place it according to which version of the album they were producing. And this original copy formerly belonged to Linda T. So if you're out there, Linda T., I've got your album. It's safe with me. As mentioned, Malcolm Rebennack was born in New Orleans. The exact date seems to be in dispute. Wikipedia says 1941. This book says 1942. Some other online sources say 1940. So we've got a general idea of how old he was. His father ran an appliance store, so he fixed electronics, TVs and radios. He also sold records. So being in that business, it gave the young Mac Rebennack access to some of the local musicians who were on the recording scene. And he grew up to go into the session business. He made some records on his own. He had different groups. He lived a life that was pretty rough and tumble. He switched from playing guitar to concentrating on piano when he got shot in the left hand by a club owner. He lived a life or a youth of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And unfortunately, only one of those things is legal to sell. So he did a stint in the pokey for certain nefarious activities involved with the other two. When he got out, he went to Los Angeles, go west young man, and got involved in the session scene there. He was briefly a member of the Mothers of Invention in their earlier days. He did a lot of session work. He was associated with Sonny and Cher in particular. And this connection led to his using some studio time at Gold Star Studios that had been booked for a Sonny and Cher session that wasn't used to record his album Gris-Gris. So just what is Gris-Gris? Gris-Gris refers to a charm, an amulet or talisman consisting of a cloth wrapping or bag inscribed with mystical incantations containing charmed objects, herbs and roots, stones or bones, perhaps sacred dirt from a graveyard. It originated in Western Africa and was part of an Islamic practice. The original Gris-Gris had cloth wrapping with Islamic scripture written on it. So the purpose of a Gris-Gris is to ward off evil, and in the case of Dr. John, he kind of emphasizes the more menacing use of the Gris-Gris to put a curse or a hoodoo on other individuals. So that gave its title to an album that's very much infused with the voodoo traditions, the ancient legends. The name Dr. John was adopted as a reference to a 19th century founder of New Orleans voodoo, Dr. John Montanet. The idea of the Dr. John character was originally not going to be for Mac Rebennack himself to portray. He originally had the idea that Ronnie Barron would be Dr. John, but he declined, so Mac Rebennack decided to be Dr. John himself, and we're very glad he did, because he does a very amazing job of being a medicine show character, a voodoo king, just a really extraordinary persona on the Gris-Gris album. The whole album is deeply rooted in New Orleans lore and tradition, from the Mardi Gras to the Limbo Dance. We hear the names of voodoo queens. We hear the name of Coco Robichaux from a werewolf legend. We hear a deeply weird and swampy sound world full of ritual, incantation, unintelligible mumbling, and just, in general, lots of strange goings-on. The first track is titled Gris-Gris Gumbo Ya-Ya, and it's a statement of intent. It's an introduction to the Dr. John Crow character. "They call me Dr. John," he says, after this unusual sounding saxophone introduction. It's hard to tell just what the instrument is. It just brings us into a really disorienting and very strange world of sound. There are ceremonial drums tapping away while Dr. John basically does a medicine show rap, laying out all the different kinds of potions and magical charms that he can supply you for the right price.
They call me Dr. John, known as the Night Tripper. Got my satchel of Gris-Gris in my hand. They tripping up and back down the bayou. I'm the last of the best, they call me the Gris-Gris man.
The second track on the album is Dans Kalinda Badoum, which was co-written by Dr. John with Harold Batiste, the saxophone player who arranged and produced the album. It's a very urgent, ritualistic piece with a lot of percussion. Dr. John himself doesn't sing on this one. The only vocals are from the background singers, who do a lot of chanting of the title Dans Kalinda Badoum and Ya 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 Ya. Very propulsive sounding, and you know that something very important and magical is happening on this track. There are a lot of mandolins on this album, so there are breaks here for the mandolin to do some sweet little tremolo sounds, but overall, we're definitely still in the world of voodoo. 3 is the most light-hearted thing on the album, Mama Roo, or Red-Haired Mama. This song is co-written by Dr. John and Jessie Hill of Oopoopadoo fame, who is one of the backing singers on the album. Mama Roo is a Mardi Gras song, and it's full of references to the Indian tribes who march on Mardi Gras Day, and Spy Boys, and the second line. And it's just a relatively jolly thing with a happy organ that was released as the album's single. It was pretty much the only possibility for the album's single, apart from Jump Sturdy, which became the B-side, and we'll get to that shortly. Track on side 1 is Danse Flambeau. I assume this is a misspelling of flambeau, as in the torches used in Mardi Gras parades. The background singers are again singing about Gris-Gris, and musically we're back in the very eerie sound world of Gris-Gris Gumbo Yaya, but the lyrics are a bit more benevolent. Instead of selling strange potions and snake oil, Dr. John is celebrating the Caribbean limbo dance.
I told the word, and I told it twice. You never do a limbo behind the red beans of the rice. Slide, gotta be slide, I'll stick them high. Your hands on your hips and let your ankle ride.
The first track on side 2 is Kroer Kubong, and this is the only song on the album not written by Dr. John. Instead, it's written by Harold Batiste, and it is kind of a companion piece to side 1's Danse Kalinda Badum, in that it's basically an instrumental. We don't have any Dr. John vocals, but we do have the background vocals doing chants. The main body of the piece is a wonderful jazz waltz, a really cool arrangement, but there is a breakdown in the middle where it completely changes atmosphere, and that's where we have the chanting of Kroer Kubong, Kroer Kubong. It's really back to that dark atmosphere that kind of pervades the album, even though it has lighter moments. Really great jazz interlude for the album. Next track is Jump Sturdy, and again, this is the companion song to a song from side 1. It's a companion piece to Mama Roo because it's the album's only other real poppy kind of song, and indeed it was the B-side of the Mama Roo single. It's a song about voodoo queens. Jump Sturdy is the name of a voodoo queen who falls foul of the legendary characters Julia Jackson and Zozo Labrique. And there are also named some streets from New Orleans, Melpomene and Erato streets, which are both named after the classical muses, the muse of tragedy, Melpomene, and the muse of poetry, Erato.
On the bayou St. John, she raised her hands and caused electrical storm. She was a treacherous lady. She never meant much harm. One day she ducked past the station house. She turned on the fire alarm.
The album concludes with the 8-minute epic I Walk on Gilded Splinters, probably the album's best-known track, and a song that's been covered by a number of artists, including Cher, who of course was already associated with Dr. John through his session work for Sonny and Cher, and the fact that this album was itself recorded on Sonny and Cher's studio dime. Also recorded by Humble Pie as a sidelong jam on their performance Rockin' the Fillmore album. But this is the original, and again it's a callback to side one. We're back to the beginning. It's like a companion piece to Gris-Gris Gumbo Ya-Ya, because it's another song about the Dr. John character, boasting of his magical abilities and his power to put the evil eye on anybody who might displease him. And it invokes, as I'd mentioned at the beginning, characters from legend, Tid Alberto and Coco Robichaud, and lots of unintelligible Creole mumbling in strange dialects. Your high school French will come invaluable here, but only to a certain point. And the whole thing is just supremely strange, mystical, eerie, and hallucinatory. After just 2 verses and lots of chanting of the title phrase, which again is creatively spelt. He spells gilded with a U, as in a workers' guild. And splinters is said to be his corruption of the word splendors. But walking on gilded splinters is a very unusual pastime, so it's a very unusual song from a very unusual composer. And the whole thing just goes through the call and response chants, the verses of boasting of Dr. John's abilities, and finally fades out into this bizarre pig-like grunting and then snoring, and it just seems to be like fading away into the night, into a dream, into a very bizarre hallucination. Gris-Gris was released in January of 1968 and failed to make the charts. Atlantic Records president Ahmet Ertegun notably remarked, "How am I supposed to market this boogaloo crap?" So Dr. John's succeeding albums did retain traces of the murky, swampy strangeness of Gris-Gris, but tended to move away a bit to a more accessible, rocking sound. And by his 5th album, Gumbo, he had moved completely into a straight New Orleans jazz and R&B direction. Following that, of course, he had his big hit with Right Place, Wrong Time. And there we go. The rest is a career. So if you've made it this far and still don't have a copy of Gris-Gris for your very own, I have one copy to give away. It will be a reissue copy on the Atco label with a reproduction of the original label. So if you would like to have a copy of that delivered to your own home, put the word kangaroo in your comment. You don't have to put it into a sentence. Just have the word kangaroo in there somewhere, so when I do a search to make sure I've got everybody, I will find it. And I'll do a drawing on October 31st, on Halloween. So be sure your comment is made by Wednesday the 30th, and somebody will get that copy. So that's it for VC Friday. Thanks very much for watching. Be well. I will talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.